up, TCK Potters? Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, Sky Guasco. This is another episode of the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast, joined by my man, Jordan Della Valle tonight. Had the last couple of weeks off, but he's back in the saddle for the Week 9 game recaps and looking forward to Week 10. We have officially crossed the halfway point. Of course, we have that extra 17th game this year, so that 9th week is about halfway point. Usually it's Week 8. Now it's Week 9. We're going to ask Jordan, put him on the hot seat for our hot topic of the evening here. We're going to ask him a question of basically what was something that he learned over the first half of the season that he didn't consider preseason. And I ask you, the listener, as well. If you're tuning in live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, feel free to jump in the comments section and let us know one thing that you've learned over the first half of this fantasy football season that you didn't consider during draft season or over the summer. It's very important that we learn on the fly. We learn as we get going, and that makes us better fantasy football players. And, of course, if you stay stubborn in fantasy, you often get passed up. So we're going to ask Jordan in just a little bit. Of course, you can tune into our comment section live as well. And if you're listening back on the podcast side, please either hit us up on Twitter at Sky Guasco or J Della Valle 7, or you can hit us up on any of the fantasy focused networks on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. Of course, we're streaming live as well on Fantasy Focused Network and the Fantasy Football Network on YouTube as well. This is episode 495 of the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast. And I want to give a quick shout out before we even get started here to our friends at betonline.ag, your number one spot to go for your online sports betting experts. We'll be right back, bringing Jordan here in just a second. This episode of the Candlestick Kids is brought to you by BetOnline. All eyes are back on the gridiron, and his teams are back for another football season. And as always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all pro and college football action this season. With the new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be your number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use the mobile app and sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V, BELIEVE, to receive your bonus. For football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Jordan, a couple weeks off. For the last couple weeks, of course, you were on the Sunday live stream. Everybody can catch us every Sunday morning from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on the Pacific side with Jordan, myself, and Bobby. Or you can, of course, hit us from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time on the East Coast side with Bucky and Levy. So, Jordan, we'll put you on the hot seat right off the bat, man. First of all, how was your last couple of weeks? And let's put you on the hot seat here. Of course, our hot topic always brought to you by Bomb Banana Hot Sauce. Our good friends here, Bomb Banana Hot Sauce. So, Jordan, first of all, how was your last couple of weeks off? And what is one thing that you have learned over the first 9 weeks that you didn't necessarily consider in preseason or during the draft season?
Yeah, so, I mean, the first thing that I learned, it runs right into what I was doing the last 2 weeks, and that is traveling early in the week when your waiver wire is running is not something you want to do.
So push flights. We'll put that at the top of the list.
If you want to do them in the morning, you want to take your flights in the morning, or if you have later flights, make sure you do your waivers in the morning. I was boarding a plane trying to get my phone to load like a small like waiver wire screen. It's brutal. Don't do it. But yeah, I was traveling to Vegas for work outside of what we do here on the podcast, and then had a couple weddings, so missed a couple Sunday lives as well. But good to be back. And for our hot topic here, the thing that I learned is, it's something that I've bought into as of the last 4 or 5 years in playing fantasy, is that the late QB or streaming QB strategy, it seems stressful. You hate it on draft day waiting for that QB, or if you're playing the streaming option and you're wondering, hey, who am I going to pick up this week? And I got to find the perfect matchup. Just play whoever's playing the Jets. But it's actually something that you want to stick to. And I know it's hard to do sometimes in draft. This year, I actually caved a lot and took a lot of Kyler Murray in the 5th round. I have Lamar Jackson. I took somewhere in the 6th of a draft because I thought I was getting the value of, hey, his ADP is in the 4th or in the 5th, and I'm getting him in the 6th. But when you look at the QBs so far, I mean, Tom Brady right now on a points per game basis is the QB1. He was drafted in like 9th, 10th round.
MVP on the season so far.
Of course. Jalen Hurts as well, if you want to talk about the real NFL MVP. No, he's
that was your call. That was your call. I
yep,
like that one.
He's the QB6 right now, and that's including obviously these last 2 weeks where he didn't have those 15-point fourth quarter just rush explosions. But I mean, you look at the guys that you were taking early. Josh Allen's the QB3 in a points per game basis, but if you go all the way down to like Kirk Cousins, QB10, he's only 5 points per game behind Josh Allen in terms of a fantasy output. And so when you think about, hey, I had to take Josh Allen with my 3rd round pick, you're missing out on the Cooper Kupps. Cooper Kupp was even later, like 4th round, I think, this year. So to me, I know it's hard, but sticking with the late QB or the streaming QB option, there's always going to be good options that are going to return value as opposed to using one of those early round picks on who's a sure thing. I mean, even Patrick Mahomes is always that sure thing right now is QB9.
Yep. And Matthew Stafford is another big one that was a late round QB. I got him as my 2nd QB in most leagues, and he's the number 1 QB in the guys that I've drafted for the most part. Dak Prescott obviously hurt for a while, didn't play very well. Lamar Jackson's been up or down, playing well lately. Ryan Tannehill didn't do much in the first half, but he's coming around as one of the late round guys. You mentioned Kirk Cousins. There's a lot of other names there as well. And we'll see, look, Justin Fields all of a sudden starting to come up. We'll see if Trey Lance gets an opportunity coming up here soon. And Justin Herbert's been up and down. Burrow's been up and down. So it's been interesting. And Rodgers as well. I mean, Packers are crushing it against this game with the Chiefs. Doesn't really count with Jordan Love, but Packers have been crushing it. But Rodgers has been throwing touchdowns, but not yardage. So, it's been very interesting this year at quarterback. So I think that's a great one. I think that bodes well also, and I'll just tangent quickly on my response. And I would just piggyback on that with the tight end position as well. Travis Kelce is the number 1 tight end on the year, but it doesn't feel like he's the number 1 because he's not as dominant as he has been over the last couple of years. Darren Waller, 19 targets week 1. I'm not sure he's had 19 targets total since. We just got George Kittle back, who hopefully will help out Niners and fantasy managers, but he's been out for a handful of weeks, right? It's guys like Pat Freiermuth off the bench, TJ Hawkinson up and down. Mark Andrews has been dominant, but he was like the 5th one out of that bunch. Kyle Pitts didn't happen until the first month of the season was passed. It's been pretty wild here. So with tight end as well, you get some late round guys also picking up the slack there. So, just consider it next year when we do this all over again and you're looking at early quarterbacks, early tight ends. I'm not against it, but you can usually find value also in the later rounds and go get yourself a 4th round Cooper Kupp, 3rd or 4th round Deandre Swift, somebody like that can help you go win a league at another position. So that is our hot topic for the evening here. Again, we're with Jordan Della Valle kicking off the week 10 look aheads and recapping the week 9 action. Before we get started into all those games, I'm going to give a shout out to our friends at Bomb Banana Hot Sauce. That was your hot topic, brought to you by Bomb Banana. Want to introduce you to our newest sponsor, Bomb Banana Hot Sauce. They're a brand new banana-based hot sauce founded by 4 University of Michigan grads. Shouts out to the Wolverines. Their sauce is an absolute must-have at any draft or watch party. Put it on nachos, pizza, wings, or literally any dip, and you will never be forced to eat boring party food again. I promise. The sweet heat and the chili banana combo provides a truly delicious restaurant-quality flavor. They currently offer 2 flavors, the original with the white label and the spicier Muy Muy that comes in the red label. I'm more of a mild guy, but if you like the spice, the Muy Muy is what you want. Be super excited to officially be part of the Bomba Nation, hashtag Bomba Nation. We hope that you'll join us there. Head over to their website, www.seekthespice.com. Use the discount code TCK at checkout to get 10% off of your order. Once again, Bomb Banana Hot Sauce, banana-based, not banana-flavored hot sauce. Seekthespice.com, promo code TCK. All right, Jordan, let's jump into this. I see a handful of people jumping into our comment section. Beach, I see you in there, my man. We'll get to your questions in a little bit. Fever as well, looking for some buy low candidates I can look for on trades. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But first, Jordan, we need to recap the week 9 action. Now, we're going to kind of work our way backwards as we do per usual. We're going to actually start with last night's game, the Monday Night Football game with the Bears and the Steelers. A much better game than I think a lot of people expected. This is the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. I know they're not Pittsburgh of old, but Pittsburgh at home on prime time, they've been dominant. They have an NFL best 52 wins on Monday Night Football now, including last night there. That's the most by far by any NFL team. And the Bears looked horrendous. I was on live with Dweez doing our Monday night show, and he's a Bears fan. And he was like live watching the show, just like, dude, they're horrible. This is killing me. I'm depressed on air. This is bad news. And sure enough, Justin Fields comes out. Darnell Mooney gets 2 touchdowns. Allen Robinson makes an appearance, which was great to see. David Montgomery coming off the yar looked very good. Unfortunately, my man Khalil Herbert now is droppable with Demont back. And they got a bye this week. But Cole Kmet, a season high in yards and targets with 8. He had 86 yards. Allen Robinson, season high in receiving yards, 68 receiving yards. Mooney has a rushing touchdown and 41 yards and a receiving touchdown. David Montgomery, 63 yards. Justin Fields, just under 300 yards, 291 and a passing score. Had another one called back from Jimmy Graham, 8 rushes, 45 yards. Claypool hurt his toe. We'll see what happens with the MRI there. Deontay Johnson, 56 yards on 5 catches. Big Ben, 205 and 2. And my boy Patty Freiermuth getting it done. Shouts out to Penn State. I know you're a Penn guy, but either way. 5 catches, 43 yards, 2 touchdowns coming off the bench there. I started him in a league in place of TJ Hawkinson. Helped win me the week there. Tied for Deontay Johnson, a team high in targets. Steelers get the win, eke it out 29-27. But the Bears showed a little bit of gut in the second half there. May have saved Matt Nagy's job for another week here. But they had a chance to win it. Bad time management and horrendous penalties. But the Steelers, man, they're playing with fire here. Naji Harris, a touchdown in 5 straight games. First rookie to do that for the Steelers. And 62 yards and a touchdown, another 3 catches for 16 yards. So actually pretty entertaining game starting in the second half.
Yeah, exactly. Starting in the second half, and that's actually where, you started to see Darnell Mooney start getting more involved. I mean, even Allen Robinson, you mentioned his 4 for 68. 39 of that was also in the second half, that long touchdown catch down the sideline. Wish it was a touchdown.
Almost was.
I know. Still have to start him in a couple leagues, which is ridiculous to say and sad to admit. But it's interesting that you mentioned Khalil Herbert, because he's droppable because of how he was used in this game as soon as David Montgomery was back, right? Montgomery comes back even with the bye next week, right? You usually see teams kind of ease guys back in, wait until after the bye week. But even with the bye week coming up, Bears went, I think it was 84% snap share for David Montgomery. With the bye week coming up, typically we would have expected that, I think, to see a little bit more around a 50-50, 60-40 split. So it's clear that the Bears are going to use David Montgomery moving forward as long as he's healthy. So the question is, are you a believer in handcuffs? And, or if you're the David Montgomery owner, if Herbert gets dropped in your league, do you pick him up? If you currently have Herbert with Montgomery, do you hold on to him? Because we saw that Herbert was extremely effective when the job was his. Obviously, Damian Williams is fully droppable if you're still holding on to him. It is going to be Montgomery or Herbert moving forward, as I would expect. But I mean, looking forward outside of, pretty much the known fantasy commodities for all these guys, I don't think there's anything really to look for moving forward outside of maybe Darnell Mooney becoming more involved in the Bears offense as Fields gets more comfortable.
One thing I will say is this Pat Freiermuth thing, I think kind of started as that would be fun. And he's a top tight end getting drafted and blah, blah, blah. But Eric Ebron got hurt and whatever. Eric Ebron wasn't efficient early, but Pat Freiermuth being young, trying to get, his wings underneath him kind of a thing, had to kind of wait it out anyway, because we know the tight end position for younger players in the NFL is very difficult to learn. But now that he's ready to go, we know Big Ben likes that short area target and tight ends in the red zone over the years. And without Juju in there, and maybe Claypool missing time with this toe injury here, James Washington might, take a bump a little bit. We saw Ray McLeod get some work, but I think Pat Fryer was legit. And I mentioned him on the waiver wire show last night. He's still available in 70% of leagues. I really think you need to pick him up because I can't imagine 7-8 tight ends I'd rather start on a weekly basis than Freiermuth. He's already had his bye week, and if you can get him, you can fire him up, or even if he's a backup for you have another one of the top guys, you could use him to trade because I can't imagine everybody in your league has a bona fide top 12 tight end. So he might be a trade position, or like a guy like Hawkinson, you can trade for higher value if you believe in Freiermuth there. So I like that move a lot. You mentioned Khalil Herbert. If I'm the DeMont manager, absolutely I'm picking up Khalil Herbert. I picked up Khalil Herbert in about 5 leagues over the last month, and I had him on the waiver show for about 3 weeks, and then he, broke out. I probably will drop him this week to make some changes with bye weeks and injuries and running backs or whatever, but reluctantly. Like, if I can keep him on my bench, yes, I believe in handcuffs, and I don't have a lot of DeMont just because my draft didn't work out that way, but I do have a lot of Khalil Herbert, and either he's a trade value piece to the David Montgomery person, or maybe DeMont gets hurt again. And we saw what Khalil Herbert was. I mean, he's at least an RB2 with RB1 upside there. So I like to have those guys, especially the second half of the season, getting ready for a playoff push. So I would absolutely keep him on your team if you can. Okay, let's dial it back here to Sunday Night Football. Another great game. Titans went just ham on the Rams, which I didn't think anybody expected, especially without Derrick Henry. Obviously, the Rams played a little bit of catch up late, but it wasn't enough. 28-16, the Titans doing work here. The defense absolutely crushing it lately. 5 sacks against the Rams offensive line, which is usually very good. 2 interceptions, and of course, they had a touchdown there as well on that pick 6. Adrian Peterson comes in. I was kind of joking on the Sunday live stream of like 10 carries, 20 yards, and a touchdown. It's pretty much exactly what he had. So 2 yards per carry doesn't matter. AP is going to get that goal line work. 125 career touchdowns for AP. Robert Woods, 7 catches, 98 yards. Cooper Kupp, 11 for 95. A.J. Brown stays hot. Julio Jones doesn't do much other than be a decoy out there, but I think Tannehill is looking good moving forward. Didn't have a lot to do in this game. It's kind of a weird game script. Matt Stafford did come away with a bit of a hand injury, so we got to keep tabs on that. But I think the Rams and the Titans moving forward will be just fine. How are your thoughts here on Sunday Night Football recap?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway, you mentioned the Rams are fine moving forward. Obviously, your Cooper Kupps. I mean, even your Robert Woods seem fine. He's been, the slow start and then had a couple weeks where he had the end zone or the touchdown that saved his fantasy week. This week, obviously, has a ton of receptions and yardage, no touchdown, as the Rams were playing catch up here against the Titans. But I think either way, playing from ahead or behind, the Rams are going to be fine from a fantasy perspective. The question to me from this game is the Titans. What are you doing with the backfield, right? Because you mentioned Adrian Peterson. There's also Jeremy McNichols was involved, getting a couple of those touches as well, obviously less in the red zone. But Deonta Foreman's still there too. And I know we talked about him on the Sunday Live as well. He was the most efficient in terms of, yardage per carry. Moving forward, it's kind of tough to know what the Titans are going to do with this backfield, or whether they're going to, keep the same offense out there and wait for Derrick Henry to come back and just plow ahead with these 3 and hope to be, as efficient, or are they going to start to lean more on the passing game in Derrick Henry's absence? I don't think they'll change the offense too much just because of the possibility of Derrick Henry coming back around later in the season. So it'll be interesting to see how these now 3 running backs, what I was hoping would be 2, are going to be utilized for the Titans.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think they will change the off. I mean, they didn't against the Rams.
Nope.
And if that defense is actually going to be playing much better than people expected, then they can play kind of ground and pound. That's what the Titans want to do. And they're the best at it in football when they're able to do it. And if you're going to get, Adrian Peterson and McNichols to at least move the ball a little bit, and maybe you get Derrick Henry back in playoffs, like you mentioned, that could be a great asset there. So I think the Titans will be just fine. And unfortunately, as a Niners fan, I think the Rams are going to take it out on my Niners next week. So not looking good here. I think the Rams will be just fine moving forward as well. Okay, let's move on here to the Patriots and the Panthers. The Patriots have won 4 of the last 5 games. They started 1-3. Mac Jones has been quite impressive here. Not lighting up the league or anything, but he's just playing winning football. The defense has been playing very, very good. You expect that under Bill Belichick. They always kind of start slow. They did this with Brady for 20 years. They kind of start slow and just like, oh, is this the Patriots of old, blah, blah, blah. And then about this time of year, they like click the gear, everything starts to work out, everyone buys into the system, and then they basically run the second half of the season here. So, don't look now. I mean, if the Bills game, which we'll get to, was kind of a joke, they obviously looked over Jacksonville, but the Patriots could be looking at least a wild card spot, and Foxborough is not a place I would want to play come December, January. So that could be interesting. Christian McCaffrey does return 106 total yards, 4 catches, 54 yards, not quite a massive CMC game, but he does come back with 106 total yards. Again, Patriots playing very well, beating the Panthers 24-6. Sam Darnold, 3 picks. Damian Harris, 15 carries, 30 yards, and a touchdown. Ramondre Stevenson had a very good game in relief, but then he got a concussion. Both guys get hurt. Brandon Bolden comes in. J.J. Taylor on the waiver wire. He's available in 99% of leagues. Jordan, what do you want to do with this backfield here? Because obviously you want the Patriots running back. It's been Damian Harris for most of the season. But if he's going to miss time at all, or they're going to mix it up and Stevenson's out, do you want Bolden? Do you want Taylor? Do you want to stick away from it? What are we going to do here? And then can we trust the Panthers passing game? We had a trade question last night on the show about DJ Moore, and we said, yes, I mean, he'll get the targets, blah, 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 but I don't know if I'm as confident in that anymore, really, because Sam Darnold's just not playing well. PJ Walker's not going to be much better. Robbie Anderson hasn't done anything, and I just am not sure we can count on the passing game other than Christian McCaffrey, but I don't think that's going to be enough for the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the Panthers, obviously, CMC, especially if you drafted him and still have him, you have to start Christian McCaffrey when he's playing. And he's going to be a solid start for you just based on the pure volume and target share that he's going to get out of the backfield for the Panthers. DJ Moore, too. I mean, even in this game where he went, I think, like 3 for 30 or so in a terrible game by Sam Darnold, we always talk about how Belichick and the Patriots take away that number one option. You can argue whether or not that was Christian McCaffrey. I mean, 106 yards didn't really limit him, but in terms of Christian McCaffrey, kind of limited.
Yeah.
But DJ Moore was limited too, but still had 7 targets. And if you're going to be getting that consistent target, basis week in and week out, like you mentioned, there's no one else really in this Carolina offense that you can look to outside of DJ Moore. From a wide receiver standpoint, Robbie Anderson's not great. No tight end to speak of, really. And so if you have DJ Moore, I'm comfortable starting him even with a lackluster quarterback performance, whether it is Sam Darnold or even PJ Walker. To answer the question of the Patriots running back situation, they play the Browns next week.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking at picking up a Patriots running back because Harris and Stevenson miss, I mean, obviously if one of them is in, I want one of those two. If they were to both miss, I don't know. I kind of lean towards Brandon Bolden and what I would expect that game script to be against the Browns. But I do think it's going to be a split role between Bolden and JJ Taylor. I don't think either's really a great start, depending on what your other options are on your team.
Yeah, I agree. And again, the Patriots backfield is always difficult to decipher. Hopefully, obviously, we'll know more as the week progresses here, but just a heads up, Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson both did get beat up in this game, so we'll have to see what we can do moving forward. All right, let's move on to the Raiders and Bobby's Giants. The Giants have won 4 of the last 5 games against the Raiders. Darren Waller, 7 catches, 92 yards. We had just kind of mentioned earlier, I mentioned tongue-in-cheek that he's barely had 19 targets since 19 targets for week 1. This was a real nice bounce-back game for him off of the bye week, almost 100 yards, 7 catches. Love to see that. Hunter Renfro, we had mentioned it all Sunday morning. He might step up big time. Of course, I wanted Bryan Edwards like everybody else, but Bryan Edwards, 4 targets, no receptions. So he unfortunately is just going to have to wait. Hunter Renfro, though, 7 catches, 49 yards, does get a touchdown there. So great floor, and he gets that touchdown. Love that in PPR. Devontae Booker has a nice game, filling in for Saquon again, 99 rushing yards. And then Evan Ingram, 2 weeks in a row here, getting a touchdown. Can we trust him at this point as a streaming tight end because Kadarius Toney falls off again. Kenny Golladay falls off again. Daniel Jones, hit or miss. Saquon, again, I'm tired of trying to guess when he is going to play. Of course, just like CMC, if he plays, you start him ish. But I think we're long gone from the Saquon days of old as of right now. So I'm not as confident there, but the Raiders are looking pretty good. Josh Jacobs, to my chagrin, has another decent game, terribly inefficient. So I stand corrected on the touchdowns because he just keeps scoring on accident, still not efficient. And again, Kenyon Drake outproduces him through the air and overall in fantasy points, but nobody seems to care there. Shots on Raiders and Giants.
I was surprised it took you that long through the game recap to mention
trying to be nice.
Your boy Kenyon Drake.
I'm trying to be nice.
6 for 70 in the receiving game. I mean, that's what you wanted out of Brian Edwards, and you got.
I'm not much of a gloater, Jordan. So I'm trying to make it, stay professional here.
I'll fill it for you. I mean, obviously with the Ruggs news, we wanted to see the first game of who's going to take over here. Waller is Darren Waller, and you mentioned that he didn't have 19 targets, but not many tight ends, not many wide receivers, not many players are getting 19 targets on a weekly basis. Anyway, I think we can kind of file away week one as an outlier, but this is kind of what you want to see from Darren Waller. Obviously, he doesn't get the touchdown, but if he did, we'd be talking about Darren Waller, reemerging and kind of picking up the volume that was lost. But you mentioned Hunter Renfro with the solid PPR volume, but yeah, the real disappointment was Brian Edwards. And the goose hurts in terms of like putting up 0 fantasy points. I started him in my high school home league. But I think he's still someone to hold on to. Because you've seen what the top receiver in this Raiders offense and for Derek Carr can do. And so, yes, this week it was Waller and Kenyon Drake and Hunter Renfro, but I do think that there's at least a non-zero chance that Brian Edwards starts to emerge as a top receiving threat for this Raiders offense.
Man, I hope so. I'm a big Brian Edwards guy. When he came out of South Carolina, I was really pumped for him. Not to land on the Raiders because I just don't think they're a pass-friendly offense in general. Derek Carr is very good. I mentioned him preseason as one of my sleepers in that division because, I think he's like 4th in the NFL right now in deep throws over 20 yards in efficiency and accuracy. So he can do it. They bring in Deshaun Jackson. We'll see how that goes as of that Henry Ruggs filler. But just the overall team isn't really that style. So we'll see what happens. Okay, let's move on to the Falcons and the Saints here. My man, Younghoe Koo gets that game winner 29-yard field goal as time expires. The Falcons get another win. Man, the Falcons, it's got to be tough being a Falcons fan right now because they either lose by like 4 touchdowns or they're leading the entire game, get behind in the fourth quarter, and then you just have to count on Matt Ryan garbage time to drive down the field and get a last-second score. That seems to be the formula every single week. Cordero Patterson, the best kick-returning running back of all time, other than maybe Gale Sayers, I suppose. 6 receptions, 126 yards, stays hot. Olamide Zaccheaus steps in. Nobody started him in fantasy, unfortunately. 3 catches, 2 of those go for touchdowns, 58 yards receiving. Russell Gage, who some of us were like, yeah, man, I mean, Russell Gage, the number 1, blah, blah, blah. He's not. Kyle Pitts stays quiet as well. Although the first play of the game, he had a 40-yard reception go right through his hands, and then he basically caught a 39-yarder later on that drive. Could have had an absolute monster day. His days are coming. I think he's a great tight end moving forward, obviously. Kamara, 104 total yards, 4 catches, 54 yards. Falcons get the win close here. Younghoe Koo, last second field goal for the win over the Saints, who beat the Buccaneers, lose to the Falcons. Divisional games are always crazy, man. 27-25 Falcons.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear. Like, I know that Gage is never going to, like, he's not the number 1 wide receiver. Like, he's not your stud wide receiver. I think Pitts fills that role for this offense, even with the tight end designation, right? But Gage did lead the team in targets in this game. He out-targeted Pitts. He out-targeted Zaccheaus, and Patterson as well. So, I mean, he has an interesting stash. I mean, Zaccheaus had the good fantasy, output with the 2 touchdowns, but I think Gage is a good stash here. Obviously, you're probably not going to be able to trade for Pitts, and I also wouldn't sell him high. I agree with you that his days are coming. He also dropped a touchdown in this one as well. But I do think Gage is interesting because the Falcons have shown that they're just not going to run the ball, whether it's because they're down and playing catch up or because Mike Davis and Cordell Patterson really aren't going to get many rushes out of the backfield. Patterson's been a good fantasy running back, but it's been pretty much all receiving work, right? And so I think on a weekly basis, there's going to be 3 receiving options for the Falcons here that you could probably start. The question is going to be which one or two of the 3 are going to actually produce, right? In this week, it was Patterson, Pitts, and I don't know, Zacchaeus with the 2 touchdowns, obviously.
Right. It doesn't help that Mike Davis is terrible. They don't have a running back. Like literally. I mean, Mike Davis is bad. He's terribly inefficient. I've been over, again, I tried to stay away from the Kenyon Drake because, I like to save my victory laps, quote unquote, as they say, until after the season. So I like to, stay away from those as best I can in the middle of the season. But one thing that I've said multiple times here, just because I think it matters to look ahead, is I was off about 5 middle round, 3rd, 4th, 5th round running backs that the fantasy community was super hot on because of their opportunity and work share, Gaskins and Jacobs and Mike Davis and some others. The only one, Miles Sanders as well. The only one I missed out on was Deandre Swift. And I stand by my claim preseason because he had that groin injury and I just was worried about his health. Obviously, the kid's a beast, so I missed on that one. But Mike Davis didn't do much in Carolina. Yes, he was good, but he wasn't Christian McCaffrey. And in the second half, he completely faded away basically because he couldn't hold up. He's never been able to hold a workload, comes into Atlanta. They bring in nobody, so he gets the work share, but now they're using a wide receiver, a kick returner to take his place. So very tough sledding there for Mike Davis, folks. Okay, Broncos, Cowboys. This one was over immediately and not the direction people thought it was going to go.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say not the direction you wanted it to go. And
a lot of people.
It was the direction I wanted it to go.
If you're an Eagles fan, you're absolutely fired up on this. If you're a Cowboys fan, you're scratching your head. Cowboys come in 6-1. They're now, 6-2. So I think they're still just fine in that division as of right now. The Broncos come in at 500. They're now 5-4, so looking really good here. Heading into bye week coming in here soon. The Broncos get the win 30-16, but they were up 30-0 at one point, and then basically garbage time and Dak or whatever got him a couple touchdowns last minute. But Zeke got beat up in this game, left the game, comes back in garbage time when the game was over. I thought that was a really bad coaching move just because it was over and you're risking basically, your top end running back at that point. Amari Cooper, a couple good catches, but a low fantasy game. CeeDee Lamb disappeared. Tony Pollard wasn't existent. Schultz either. And Dak had garbage time there. So interesting situation for the Cowboys. They'll be fine moving forward, but it was a bad day for sure. Now, on the other side, my boy Javonte Williams, another guy I was punting in the middle rounds there at running back was Melvin Gordon. Now, he scores touchdowns every week, so he is staying afloat, but 20 carries for 80 yards, okay, 4 yards per carry, whatever, but 20 carries, 20 carries for 80 yards. He does get a touchdown. My boy Javonte Williams, 17 carries, 111 yards, 3 less carries, 31 more rushing yards. I digress. Tim Patrick holds it strong here, 4 catches, 85 yards, and the touchdown. Jerry Jeudy has outpaced both Sutton and Patrick since he's been back, but it's been Patrick scoring the touchdowns and still getting the work. He's available on waivers as well. Cortland Sutton has drastically fallen off. Albert O, we expected to be a good streamer. Kind of a down week for him too with Noah Fant out. So how do we feel about the Cowboys? I know you're an Eagles fan and you're stoked as a fan. As a fantasy analyst, are you worried at all about Dallas, or is this just kind of knocking off the rust with Dak and blah, blah, blah? They'll be fine. And the Broncos, it's 50-50 in the backfield. What do we do with the receivers, though?
Yeah, I mean, for Dallas, I don't think you're concerned at all moving forward. I also haven't looked at their schedule recently, but, I mean, they still have to play the NFC East a couple more times. Like, you get Washington, you get the Giants, and you get my beloved Eagles that are going to be great fantasy output games in those matchups. So I'm not too worried about the Cowboys. I mean, really the only thing is going to be potential injury to any of these guys. But even in Lamb's down game, had 9 targets this week. So not too worried about any of the fantasy options for Dallas. On the flip side, I am a little bit worried about Cortland Sutton because he did have those good middle stretch weeks when Jerry Jeudy was out and he was the one. But like you mentioned, as soon as Judy's been back, this week goes, I think, 6 for 70 or so. I mean, has been the one and was the one while he was healthy early on in the season. So I'm buying Judy. I'm worried about Sutton. The interesting thing about Tim Patrick is he's had a couple good weeks here the last couple weeks because of the touchdowns, right? But we know that the touchdowns are one of the least consistent or least sticky stats in terms of like a week-to-week performance. Without that, the touchdown here, he goes like 4 for 70 or so, something like that. And that's, kind of what you expect out of Tim Patrick, of like the 11 to 14 PPR points, which is fine for a filler week on any bye weeks, but certainly not going to be your number 2 or God forbid your number 1 wide receiver on your fantasy team. Mute Sky.
The Denver Broncos were a surprising upset this week, but they have dominated the Cowboys in the last handful of years. They have won 7 straight games against the Dallas Cowboys, of course, dating back to Romo and Peyton Manning. They've had a long, they don't play each other every year. Of course, they're in different leagues. So they only play each other every couple of years. But over the last handful of years, Broncos have owned the Dallas Cowboys. Interesting there. If you're a Cowboys fan and the stress is leading to early hair loss, perhaps our good friends at Carifactor can help you out. Here's a quick commercial from them. Jordan and I will be right back with the rest of our Week 9 recaps.
Hey TCK Potters and Fantasy Focus community. Are you looking for options for hair loss? There are many options out there for treating it. However, most products treat the cause, such as DHT, and don't do much to support the growth of new and stronger hair. It's like removing harmful weeds from your lawn, but not doing much to fertilize the grass. That's why the Fantasy Focus and TCK team has partnered with Carifactor. Carifactor saw this problem and focused their research on finding just the right combination of biosynthetic growth factors and an innovative delivery system to promote fuller, stronger looking hair. So whether you're a listener who suffers from various forms of alopecia or even stress-related hair loss, the Carifactor treatment is the perfect scalp-friendly solution that can help and influence stronger and healthy hair throughout all stages of the hair life cycle. And now, exclusively for TCK listeners, use the promo code TCK at checkout to get 15% off all products at shop.mycarifactor.com. That's shop.mykerafactor.com. Carifactor, skincare for hair.
All right, let's move on to the Browns and the Bengals. 41-16. Browns putting the hurt up on the Bengals. They get rid of Odell Beckham, and they go ham. This is kind of what we had talked about Sunday morning, tongue-in-cheek a little bit, but now Baker's set free. Everyone's talking about Odell Beckham being set free. I think it's more like a Baker Mayfield situation here where he doesn't have to deal with that drama. My boy Nicky Chubb, 14 carries, 137 yards, a big 70-yard touchdown as well, 2 touchdowns on the day. Now, he has been confirmed to test positive for COVID. That whole running back room has as well. The only active running back I know of right now, we're recording on Tuesday, is Dearness Johnson. Kareem Hunt still out on IR. Demetric Felton also out with COVID as well. Now, we have a question in our comment section I want to get to right now. Are we worried about Nick Chubb? Do we think he plays this week? He is vaccinated, so he just has to basically test negative in back-to-back tests throughout the week. If he can do that, then he will be able to play. So hopefully he will be able to play. But if he doesn't, take a look to see if Dearness Johnson is still available on your waivers. Great game from Nick Chubb, though, in this one. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I called him out in the Sunday morning live show and caught a 60-yard bomb right off the bat. Just 1 catch, 26 yards after that, but he did have that long touchdown. So I think he will be that number 1 deep threat moving forward for the Browns moving forward. And then Main Mixon, 110 total yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 catches, 46 yards. So we love that from Joe Mixon getting the work again. And efficiency hasn't been very good for Mixon, but the volume is king in fantasy football, and he is certainly getting that there. Chase could have had a bigger game. I called out a T. Higgy game in the Sunday morning live stream. Sure enough, it was Tyler Boyd, still an afterthought here, but the Browns looked really, really good in this one. The Bengals phoned it in early. I think both offenses will be just fine moving forward, but the Browns defense really showed up in this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pretty much the key takeaways here that, is what do the Browns receiving options now look like? Odell's gone, but didn't really take much with him, right? We talked about Ruggs leaving the Raiders, and that being the pretty much number 1A, B with Ruggs, or Renfro there. Odell was not really taking much with him, wasn't really the target hog per se in this offense. But Peoples-Jones for now. And then, kind of that tight end room. I don't know what to do with that tight end room. You have Njoku and Hooper. Neither are really living up to what I think they could in terms of like a talent level. And I think really the fancy options here for the Browns are pretty much whoever doesn't have COVID and whoever's not injured out of that running back room.
Yeah, I agree. Baker Mayfield's second most quarterback wins with 27, second most in the first 4 seasons in Browns history. Now, we know that they have about a 30-year run here of terrible quarterbacks. No disrespect to those gentlemen as individuals, but they have not exactly had a good run of wins. So Baker Mayfield now looking good there for the Browns long term. All right, let's move into easily the upset of the entire season this year here. I do think it's a, rinse your hands. The Bills will be fine next week. And Jacksonville may not win another game this week or this year, but the Bills upset by Jacksonville 9-6, no touchdowns in this game. Jacksonville has 3 field goals. That's enough to beat the Bills. In this game, they had their first field goal on U.S. soil, which I thought was really funny. The only other field goal they've had this year was 3 in London, and now they get 3 on Sunday to beat the Bills here. Diggs, 6 catches, 85 yards. Carlos Hyde filling in for James Robinson, a late scratch, 21 carries, 67 yards, but a stout defense there, obviously. And really, I mean, you got to give it to Jacksonville. There was so much talk on the games recording there. It was obnoxious at the end there. I mean, Scott Hansen's favorite thing of the whole weekend was this Josh Allen thing. But give it to Josh Allen, the defender, and the Jacksonville defense really kept Josh Allen, the quarterback, and the Bills offense in check here. They played very, very well there. So very impressive move here from Jacksonville. I don't think that keeps up weekly. And the Bills, I think, just slept on Jacksonville. Looking ahead, that happens in the NFL. They got shellacked, weren't paying attention. I think they're going to be just fine next week. Probably a huge bounce back game, a 50-burger probably coming for Buffalo moving forward here. But you got to give it to Jacksonville, get their second win of the season.
Yeah, and it's funny, the whole game you were kind of sitting there and Bills again start slow. Obviously, the whole game was slow for that Bills offense, but it was like the third week in a row where the first half, the Bills offense was slow, and you're kind of like, all right, what? Josh Allen's going to throw for 303. When's it going to happen? And it just never did. Weird game for the Bills offense. Again, like you said, not something that we are going to expect to continue moving forward. But the one thing that I would continue to expect moving forward on the flip side of this game is Dan Arnold being very involved in this Jaguars pass offense, right? Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, Jamal Agnew, no one from that wide receiving room has really stepped up and, separated themselves as A, not only a fantasy asset, but B, the lead guy in that pass game for the Jaguars offense. And so I'm interested to see if Dan Arnold obviously comes over from the Panthers earlier this season and has really filled in nicely for that offense.
I totally agree. And again, if you're looking for streaming tight ends, you want somebody getting volume. Yep. Dan Arnold's going to get you 5 catches for 50 yards, which I know isn't super impressive, but in PPR, that's 10 points, 9-10 points on a floor there. I know it's not amazing, but if he accidentally scores, that bumps up to 16 right away. And for the tight end position outside of the big dogs, like that's a massive advantage. Look, Pat Freiermuth, right? Not a huge impressive stat line, but he got 2 touchdowns, and that swings matches immediately when you have somebody filling in like that. So I think that's a great call with Dan Arnold, and he has been very, very effective since coming over. And with DJ Chark being out, he's going to be, I think, the number 2 behind Marvin Jones. And Marvin Jones, man, this guy, he's played with some bad quarterbacks. I mean, obviously he had Matt Stafford for a handful of years, Andy Dalton earlier in his career when Andy was still good. But Marvin Jones, man, great underrated receiver, constantly open. And Lawrence missed him a number of times. Trevor Lawrence and Sam Darnold are 2 rookie quarterbacks to beat the Bills under Sean McDermott. So the Bills pretty much invincible otherwise, but 2 flubs when they overlooked the Jets with Sam Darnold and the Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. Okay, let's move on here to the Texans and the Dolphins. Yikes. This was the fight of the 1-7 squads. Dolphins get the win here 17-9, but doesn't really count beating the Texans. Tyrod Taylor, 3 picks. Now, I always trust Bobby's analysis. Obviously, he has his reasonings for doing things, but we had constantly had questions about Tyrod Taylor, Jacoby Brissett, other streaming quarterbacks, and it was just like I couldn't pick Tyrod Taylor because I was worried about his non-rushing ability going on IR for a hamstring issue. Tyrod Taylor's not a good enough NFL quarterback, in my opinion, to win fantasy matches through the air. He's got to run, and he wasn't able to run because of a hamstring. They bottled him up, 3 picks. Obviously, he was a dud there, unfortunately. Cooks, 6 catches, 56 yards. That's pretty much his floor. Love that. Jalen Waddle, 8 catches, 83 yards, and Myles Gaskin scores again here. Got a ton of work in this one. I don't necessarily love him moving forward, but if you need a, startable RB3, RB2, Myles Gaskin could be bought on the cheap here right now if you need somebody. So Dolphins, Texans, Dolphins get the win here 17-9.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tyrod Taylor, and going back to our preseason bold calls or crazy calls and bold predictions episode, I talked about how Tyrod Taylor has not, his peak performance as a quarterback obviously was as a rushing quarterback back when the Bills, and I think it was like 15-17, and just his ability to supply fantasy points for the wide receiver position was essentially non-existent, with the exception of one season where one receiver was like a viable fantasy option. And that's kind of what we're starting to see with Brandon Cooks. I mean, I thought it would flip the other way and Brandon Cooks would not, would drop off. I think I said top 36 or top 50 wide receivers with Tyrod Taylor as his quarterback. And so it's kind of flipping the other way, where if Tyrod Taylor's going to supply any passing volume, it's going to be Brandon Cooks. I mean, the other receiving options in this game, Brandon Cooks had 13 of 39 targets. He had a 33% target share in this game. The passing volume is just going to go through Brandon Cooks. I don't want to start anyone else for fantasy on this Texans team. You're on mute, Sky.
Trying to be professional here. My puppy is going nuts on the squeak toy downstairs. So I mute and then I forget and I come back in. So apologies for that. When we're streaming live on ESPN in a few years, like this won't be an issue. I'll have a producer to handle my mutes, so I won't have to worry about that. So if you're a producer, let me know and you can jump on the show. The Houston Texans have lost 8 straight games, longest active streak since 2013, pre-Deshaun Watson, of course. And look, they're on pace like Jacksonville was last year. They won opening day, coincidentally, against Jacksonville, and then they go and lose out. And they're looking for that number 1 pick. And it might be my boy Kayvon Thibodeau out of Oregon. I'm just throwing that out there. The dude's a beast. Right now, he's Todd McShay's number 1 draft pick. So we'll see what happens there. But could be the new J.J. Watt there for Houston for years to come. All right, Minnesota Vikings and Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens squeaked this one out in overtime. Justin Tucker hits the game winner here, 34-31, went back and forth. The Ravens had a chance in overtime, didn't score. The Vikings had a chance, didn't score. Come back, pick it up on a 4th down. Then they go kick the game winner here, get it done. Baltimore Ravens have won 12 straight games versus the NFC. That's the longest active streak in the NFL. Lamar Jackson, 266 yards, 3 touchdowns, 120 rushing yards. This dude is doing very well as a passer this year, his best season passing, but he's still just absolutely unbelievable on the ground when he needs to be. Phenomenal. Hollywood Brown, 9 catches, 116 through the air. A lot of that coming late. Le'Veon Bell sighting, Jordan. Like to see that. The ghost of Le'Veon Bell scores a TD here. Dalvin Cook, 17 carries, 110 yards. One of them was a big run there. And Justin Jefferson, 3 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown. Thielen held in check in this one. My boy, Rashad Bateman, didn't blow up yet, but it is coming. I mentioned him. He's my number 1 waiver claim for like the 8th week in a row. 70% availability. He is going to break out eventually. I want him on my team. He had another play overthrown and another big catch called back per usual here for the Ravens. But big, impressive win for the Ravens. And again, like the Falcons, the Vikings play tough games. They just can't squeeze them out here. So 5-2, Ravens go in and beat Minnesota there. And they're 6-2 now, man. And they're up at the tops there with Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you love the Le'Veon Bell sighting. I hate it. It's because
it's just fun because he used to be Le'Veon Bell.
Absolutely. But at this point, like, Devonta Freeman used to be Devonta Freeman. Like, I just want, as a fantasy, like, I mean, I get they're both, veterans and probably trying to manage workload and mitigate against another running back injury.
Latavius Murray isn't even there, so it's going to get worse when he comes back.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Lamar Jackson has 120 rush yards. So did the Baltimore Ravens running back. They just split it, and then only one of them gets a touchdown. And that's where it's frustrating because I don't think anyone really started Le'Veon Bell. I mean, maybe if you happen to have a last minute, pivot or someone got injured, but you probably didn't. Maybe you started Freeman, but this is what happens when you have to start a Ravens running back is you start Freeman. If he's not the one with the touchdown, you end up with 7-8 fantasy points because neither of them are involved in the pass game here for Baltimore. That's pretty much strictly Hollywood, Andrews, and now your boy Bateman.
Right. Bateman's coming, folks. I know I've been saying that for a month. It is on its way. Don't miss out. All right, let's go to the Chargers and Jordan's Eagles here. Tough one for the Eagles. Another close call. The Chargers get the win on the road, 27-24. Justin Herbert, 356 and 2 touchdowns. He had a rushing TD as well. Keenan Allen, 12 catches, 104 yards here. Mike Williams banged up in the beginning here. Devonta Smith, 5 catches, 116 and a touchdown. Gotta love that. If you're an Eagles fan, this kid's going to be great for a long time. Jordan Howard, my goodness, 17 carries, 71 yards and a touchdown. Kenny Gainwell did score, by the way. Just want to throw that out there. But Jordan Howard, the lead back here, all of a sudden out of nowhere, 17 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Goddard held in check in this one as well. Dustin Hopkins, go-ahead field goal with 2 seconds left to beat Philadelphia for the Chargers.
Yeah, I remember on our Sunday Live, we kept getting Boston Scott or questions. And in the right situations, I don't remember who I picked them over, and I'm not going to say who I did, even if I remembered who. But I said, I was like, I'm hyping up Boston Scott too much. It's gonna be a down week. I thought it was gonna be your boy Gainwell, who did score, like you mentioned. But I mean, at this point, as an Eagles fan and as a fantasy football player and analyst, I kind of want Miles Sanders back. I mean, if you put Miles Sanders into this type of workload, I mean, he's got to be more talented at this point in his career than Jordan Howard is, than a Boston Scott. You combine, the workload that those two are getting into Miles Sanders, things are looking up for Miles in the running back room, not being split among so many running backs in the Eagles. So no, he's coming back. If you had an IR slot, you probably moved him to your IR slot. I doubt many people would have dropped him, going into this injury, but I guess it's possible if someone absolutely needed to drop him, but for the most part, he should be owned. But I know earlier we saw a buy low candidate. Miles Sanders might be that buy low candidate for me. And I'm not saying that as an Eagles fan. I'm saying that as someone who Miles Sanders, when he was healthy, did not perform up to expectations. Mm-hmm. And so the Miles Sanders owner is probably already disappointed. You add to the fact that he's coming back off of injury. And so still don't know how he's going to perform. I'm just looking at the opportunity and how the Eagles running backs are currently performing. And I could, I think you would buy Miles Sanders lower than what he could perform at coming back off the IR.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I've been pretty loud about not being interested in Miles Sanders, but that's because Sirianni wasn't using the running back position properly, in my opinion. If they're going to do this and you give Miles Sanders 17 carries, you're right. He probably has more than 71 yards and hopefully multiple scores with his talent. So let's hope that, but I just can't trust it yet, man. I can't trust it. I'm sorry. I've spent too long on the Miles Sanders soapbox to just jump off because Jordan Howard is getting it done. I said Kenny Gainwell would have 4 touchdowns. I was 3 off, unfortunately, but he did get in there. All right, couple more games here. Cardinals whooping up on my Niners, unfortunately. And this is without Kyler Murray, so it stings a little deep. With Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, I expected 31-17 shellacking. Not a problem. Nuke and Kyler are out. I'm like, you know what? We might only lose by a field goal. Nope. Colt McCoy gets done. Defense absolutely unbelievable. Jimmy Garoppolo still bad. That's right, folks. Trey Lance should be in sooner than later, and you just can't account for the talent of 3-touchdown James Conner. What are the Niners thinking here? James Conner, 96 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, a 40-yard receiving touchdown, 77 total receiving yards. Christian Kirk, who Bobby had put in early on the Sunday Live show, said he was going to step up big. He did. 6 catches, 91 yards. Kittle returned 6 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Love that from Kittle. Ayuk, 6 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. If you've been waiting on Ayuk, I think now is the time. He's out of the doghouse. Him and Shanahan had a powwow. Things are cool. We're good to move forward here. And I think Ayuk is going to be just fine moving forward as a streaming wide receiver on bye weeks. Kyler will come back. Nuke will come back. I think the Arizona Cardinals will be just fine. But give it to Colt McCoy, man. Career backup in the NFL, but comes in, does his job. Huge division win here for the Cardinals to go to 8-1.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's also, I think, still a question whether or not Kyler and Hopkins are back for the following week. And so interesting to, target. I wouldn't say I'm targeting Colt McCoy, but he did prove that he's, at least going to be viable for fantasy if Kyler is out. It's the question of, are there any other streaming options this week of who's available on your waiver wire instead of playing Colt McCoy next week? Outside of that, I mean, Edmonds obviously goes down with the injury, which was really upsetting, especially if you started Edmonds. He had a good week, a good expected week. Obviously, seeing what James Conner did, you would have said Edmonds probably could have had at least one of those touchdowns and given you a good week. You walk away with 3 yards is pretty tough to swallow, but that's just the nature of football sometimes. So got to keep an eye on obviously Edmonds and his injury. But
right now he's set to miss multiple weeks.
Yeah.
So not looking good. And I don't mean to cut you off, but we did mention Benjamin as well, previous 7th rounder out of Arizona State. Loved that kid playing for the Sun Devils. Of course, I'm a Pac-12 guy, so I watch a lot of these extra late rounders here from the Pac-12. But kid's legit, and if he gets that early down workload with James Conner, I think he can be a streamable running back asset to pick up alongside James Conner. If you believe in Edmonds, I think Benjamin can do the same.
Yep.
All right. Now, Niners are going to be tough. If Trey Lance comes in, I think he is a viable start. But we'll see what happens with his pass catching weapons there. The Arizona Cardinals they have 30+ points in all 5 of their road games this year. Absolutely dominant. Last game, Packers, Chiefs. Chiefs get the win 13-7. Super ugly football game. You would expect the Chiefs to come in, whoop on the Packers that don't have Aaron Rodgers. They have kind of a half-assed Davonte Adams because they don't have Rodgers. Aaron Jones disappeared in this game. A.J. Dillon had a good effort, but not what they needed here. Rodgers should be back. Some controversy with his vaccination and blah, 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 but he should be back this week. Davonte Adams, just 42 yards. Jordan Love does not step up to the plate the way that I thought he would. I had a last-second scratch for Kyler Murray in a league, so I had to go to the waiver wire, pick somebody up. Someone in my league had picked up Jordan Love in like the 5 minutes I looked away from the waiver wire to go pick somebody up. So I settled on Justin Fields reluctantly against the Steelers. I was like, no. Worked out. I ended up getting the W. I was pretty stoked in the long run there. So that one worked out. Darrell Williams, 19 rushes, 70 yards again. He's the filler there, not Derek Gore. Kelsey, 5 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Mahomes has been real tough, and Tyreek Hill is usually pretty nice there, but kind of a down week. Interesting here. The Chiefs, as we know, are 5-4 on the season. They're 4-0 versus the NFC, and they're 1-4 versus the AFC. I just thought that was interesting there, though. Throw this one out for the Packers, but thoughts on the Packers and Chiefs game?
Yeah, definitely throw it out. I mean, even Davonte Adams, 14 targets, just when Jordan Love's your quarterback.
Same 14 targets.
Exactly. And same thing with Aaron Jones. And now A.J. Dillon's starting to be more involved, even in this game. was pretty involved in both the rush and pass offense for the Packers. So I expect a full bounce back for this offense. Obviously, once Rodgers is back, Kansas City's defense, although not even great, when you have Jordan Love as the quarterback trying to beat you, the thought process is make Jordan Love beat us. And if he beats us, you tip your cap or you adjust your defensive scheme going into the second half. But for the most part, you can absolutely key in on the rush offense and stopping the run and making Jordan Love beat you. So throw it out for the Packers. The Chiefs offense, man, is concerning. You mentioned earlier that Kelsey's the tight end one, just not the same tight end one that he was years ago. He's not separating himself from the pack, nor even like the top three.
He's not 7th pick overall tight end one is what I'm saying. He's good, but he's not pick him over Davonte Adams good.
Right. Yep. Although in this game,
well,
yeah. But again, it's one of those things where I don't want to really buy low on any of the Chiefs because it hasn't been one game. It's not like 2 games. It's kind of been all year.
It's been a month at least.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill's the only one because he gets 12 targets a game.
And surprisingly enough, it's actually been Darren Williams. Obviously, it has been sufficient, but you're not going to have him the rest of the season because Clyde's going to come back presumably, and as long as he's healthy, then the question is, do they split? Is it all back to Clyde like DeMont was with Herbert?
That's an interesting question to dive into next week when we get into our. And I'll preface just really quickly. I'll get into it. We got a question here, but we are going to have our second half predictions and things coming up next week. Kind of a teaser there. And Clyde is going to have to come up because that's a big situation with the lack of the Chiefs offense, the lack of Clyde, frankly, and Darrell Williams and even Derek Gore have stepped up in their opportunity there. So that's going to be interesting as well. Okay, that wraps up our week 9 recaps and looking ahead to week 10. Buck and Bob coming up tomorrow with all of your streamers, of course, starts of the week and whatnot. We do have a handful of questions. We're running overtime a little bit, so we're going to blaze through these quickly here. Beach is in the chat room, of course. Appreciate you, Beach. Thank you so much. And we're going to bring this one up really quick. Is Jamar Chase or Mike Evans for Cook or Eckler fair if the owner of the Cook Eckler has both Darrell Henderson and running backs has a weak receiving core? So basically, is it fair? And these fair ones are weird because fair is relative. But Jordan, like in a nutshell vacuum, Jamar Chase or Evans for Cook or Eckler, is that quote unquote fair to you if that person has Henderson and needs a wide receiver?
Yeah, like you mentioned, fair is very relative. If I'm the Cook, Eckler, Henderson,
or subjective, is that a better word?
Subjective. Yeah. If I'm the Cook, Eckler, Henderson owner, and I'm, and I can only start 2 running backs, maybe there's not a flex or it's a 1 RB, 1 flex, and so I can't start all 3, and one's just racking up 15 to 20 points on my bench, and I'm starting the likes of Allen
Robinson.
Allen Robinson. Yep. Good. Yeah. Then maybe I'm willing to make that move. And so if you're asking if it's fair for you to send it, I'd send it because you never know, and it's always worth the shot. The worst case scenario is it starts trade talks, or you just get a rejection, and you say, hey, I thought you needed, you'd want the wide receiver. I think the most fair trade out of this is probably Jamar Chase for Henderson.
I agree.
So if you're going to, be the righteous, altruistic owner, that'd be the offer that I send, or at least start with.
That's interesting. You said I was literally going to couple that once you finish there and just basically say Cook and Eckler for one of those guys. I would not do. If I had all 3 of those running backs, I would get rid of Henderson and look for Jamar Chase. If not, then Mike Evans. But I would keep Cook and Eckler if you possibly can. All right, Fever coming up here. I'm going to put a pin in this one. What are some buy low candidates I can look for? I hate to put a pin in this because I just will, though, because all of our research on the show isn't done yet. I'm going to put a sneak attack here and kind of let everybody know in on something. We have our 500th episode coming up next week. First of all, unbelievable that I've turned this microphone on 500 times since 2018, but we have that show coming up next week. Not sure on the drop date and everything else and the festivities, but we're building it behind the scenes. a chunk of that episode is going to be our second half preview with trade candidates, look forward to, guys to drop or get rid of, guys to look ahead to, fantasy schedule updates and look aheads as well. So Fever, I don't want to dodge your question. I apologize for doing so right now, but we have more research to look into for buy low candidates specifically. So make sure you tune in next week and we will get to all those. I promise. If you need somebody right now, DM me on Twitter at Sky Guasco, SkyGuasco. Let me know your team and I can do some like personal research for you right away. But otherwise, just hang out with us for another week and we'll get to you on that. Next question here from Fever. Should I trade Darren Waller for a running back or a wide receiver and just have Freiermuth as my tight end one? Jordan, I brought this up earlier. I'm okay with Freiermuth over a Hawkinson. Darren Waller finally woke back up here. Are you comfortable enough? I mean, Freiermuth has come out of nowhere for 3 touchdowns the last couple of weeks, but Eric Ebron might come back. Big Ben, do you trust him? Would you trade away Waller to sell high for a running back wide receiver and keep Freiermuth, or are you going to keep Waller and Freiermuth for insurance?
I'm going to take the easy way out and say that it's going to depend on who you think you're getting back for Waller. Waller is
sell high, massively high, a tight end for sure.
Absolutely. Because you're basically selling Waller on the, hey, look at what he did week 1 when Ruggs and Edwards weren't a thing, and he got 19 targets. And look what he did this last week when Ruggs and Edwards weren't a thing. Like that's what you're selling the potential owner on. It also depends on like, who are my running backs and wide receivers? If I was Chase Edmonds owner, or maybe I've been filling in with like Devontae Booker and Darrell Williams these past couple weeks, who are starting or potentially seeing their fantasy season come to an end in terms of Saquon and CEH coming back.
Right.
Then I'd be willing to get Waller with maybe a running back plus coming back. But it is tough with Freiermuth because you've been happy with him because he's scored. And so the question is if those touchdowns start to fall off and he comes back to earth with those, are you going to be happy with a 4 to 8 point?
Definitely selling high. I'm looking for first round, second round preseason draft capital, like an Aaron Jones off of a dud week, maybe, right? Or an Austin Eckler or somebody that hasn't really produced. Nick Chubb maybe going to be out this week. Somebody like that. I'm looking to upgrade if you're going to get rid of Darren Waller. It's 12 AAC. Question, boys. I got a trade for Zeke Elliott and Mikey Williams in return for CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Hurts, and Javonte Williams. What do I do? Let's assume half PPR because he didn't let us know.
I think this depends on the quarterback situation that you have on your fantasy team and how successful you've been with streaming and what your league setup is, of how many quarterbacks are available. I'm also assuming that this is a 1 quarterback league. I prefer CeeDee Lamb to Mikey Williams. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb coming off of the tough week that we just mentioned, but again, had the 9 targets. So he's going to be fine moving forward. Javonte Williams has been great. He's been more efficient than Melvin Gordon. Hasn't been the touchdown. Melvin Gordon's had more of the touchdowns than Javonte Williams has. So I think, obviously, Zeke to Javonte is definitely a downgrade. But so is a CD to Mikey Williams is an upgrade. And so really the question is, what's your quarterback situation and how much of an upgrade, I'm assuming, because Hurts is fantastic. How much of an upgrade is Hurts to make me willing enough to do this deal?
I think that's a great call. If you have let's just so middle of the road guys, Daniel Jones, Joe Burrow, maybe, Lawrence, Cousins. Cousins has been playing pretty well. Yeah. But some of those middle of the road guys that you're kind of like, I'm hoping for the best, Derek Carr or whatever, then I would go Jalen Hurts because he's a differentiator. But I agree the other two are probably knockdowns a little bit there. Oklahoma robbed by the College Football Playoff Committee once again. Beach, sorry to hear that. We'll have to check in with you in a couple more weeks. Ducks control their own destiny. So let's just hope the Duckies hold it out there. C. Griffin, what up, my dudes? What up, yo? I'm thinking of doing this trade here. Waller for Antonio Brown. Okay, this is Fever coming back. Waller for Antonio Brown, Ayuk, Kareem Hunt, and Dan Arnold. I also have Freiermuth just in case. So getting a haul for Darren Waller, this is how you do it. Antonio Brown, Brandon, Ayuk, Kareem Hunt, and Dan Arnold. Now, Dan Arnold, I don't think you need. Kareem's still out. Antonio Brown might be out this week too. And Ayuk, which is hit or miss. So it's a lot of good names, but I don't know if you can really bank on any of these guys here.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like you're getting a lot of quote unquote depth, but how many of these guys are you actually going to start on a week to week basis
Right.
that you're taking Waller out of your lineup or substituting in Freiermuth? I mean, Antonio Brown, if he's fully healthy, but also has Godwin and Evans that he's competing with. Ayuk is coming off a good week, but prior to that hasn't been great. And when Lance comes in, assuming that he does, the passing volume probably goes down a bit with Lance's ability to run. Think about, basically having Lamar Jackson-esque or Kyler Murray-esque at your quarterback instead of Jimmy Garoppolo, who's going to run less. And then you mentioned Kareem, obviously still on IR, and I think Dan Arnold's just a throw-in at this point. So,
and he's got Freiermuth. We just talked about that. So you're getting a backup tight end, which I don't think is necessary. So I think I'd maybe pass on that particular package, but I think you're in the right mentality. And Fever comes back in later. He was obviously listening, or they were obviously listening. And sounds good. I'll tune in next week. So hang out there. All right, last one here. Beach had a big trade we talked about earlier. How about Evans and Elijah Mitchell for Eckler? I'm going to jump in really quickly and say no. Evans is touchdown dependent. Antonio Brown should be coming back eventually. Gronk should be coming back eventually. Godwin is that number one, I think, most consistently. And Elijah Mitchell, I'm telling you right now, he faded this week. He went off last week. Jeff Wilson's going to get more involved. We'll see what happens when Trey Lance comes back. I don't like it. I want Eckler, period. I like the wide receiver running back combo for Eckler, but I would shoot higher. Elijah Mitchell, I think, might fade away a little bit. The 49ers offensive line is just too beat up right now to do what they want to do. Any thoughts on that, Eckler? Or you're not Eckler, Jordan?
I can be if you want to pay me like Eckler. I'll be. I'd love that.
You got it, dude.
Also a great guy. He loves.
I will when I can. I promise.
By the way, it's funny when you said no to this trade at first. I was shocked because I read it the opposite way. I was like, I'd absolutely
getting Eckler for
right. Exactly. So I agree with you. I want the Eckler side of this trade.
Yeah, likewise. And he also threw in down here Evans, Gronk, Elijah. Again, it doesn't change much for me there. I want Eckler and or get a better, more consistent running back. I just think long term that'll lose out. All right, guys, we went quite a bit overtime here in the spirit of the NFL this year. Every week has had an overtime game, so we want to give you one here on the TCK pod as well. That wraps up the Week 9 recaps and the Week 10 look aheads with my man Jordan Della Valle on Twitter, JDellaValle7. You can find me, Sky Guasco, as well. Again, next week, episode 500. Hoping to get a special guest or two. Also, we're going to have a great list of topics. Might run a little bit long on that one. We might purposely have a good chunk episode there for you. So tune in next week for our 500th episode. Of course, tune in Sunday morning for our live start sit show. We're having a great time there. And again, any of the Super Chat contributions go to our friends at Good Sports. 10% of all of our donations go to Good Sports here. They have helped out 541,000 kids, underprivileged kids, play youth sports around the United States. So make sure you help us and make sure those contributions come in here so we can help them as well. This episode and all episodes have been brought to you by the Believe Podcast Network and BetOnline AG. Find us anywhere the fantasy focused channels are spread: Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and right here on YouTube, of course. We'll catch you next time. Buck and Bob coming up tomorrow with your streams of the week, quarterback streamers, starts of the week as well. I will see you again on Thursday night. Everyone have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening and get over that hump on Wednesday. We'll talk to you soon. From my man, Jay Della, I'm your boy, Sky. We are